Hello, dear traveller. Welcome. Whether you're settling in for the night, letting your eyes grow heavy as the world outside grows quiet, or perhaps you're working through the late hours, seeking a story to keep you company, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. A complete story. One of ancient kingdoms and forgotten gods, of sacrifice, love, and the terrible weight of memory. This is the story of Hollow Knight, the tale of a fallen kingdom called Hallownest, and the small, silent warrior who would journey into its depths. So settle in, get comfortable, let your breathing slow and your mind drift as we descend together into the darkness below. There's no need to rush, we have all the time we need. Let us begin. Imagine, if you will, a world beneath the world. Far below the surface of the earth, past layers of stone and root and ancient sediment, there exists a vast network of caverns and tunnels. A place where bioluminescent plants cast gentle blue and green light across crystalline walls, where underground lakes reflect the glow of distant lanterns, where entire civilizations rose and fell in the quiet darkness, far from the sun that you and I know so well. This is the land of Hallownest, and our story begins not with the kingdom itself, but with what came before. Because to understand Hallownest, to truly understand the tragedy that befell it, we must first understand the forces that shaped it. We must go back to the very beginning. In the beginning, there was darkness. Not the frightening darkness of nightmares, but something older, something patient and vast. Deep beneath the earth, in the lowest reaches of the world, there existed a place that would come to be known as the Abyss. The Abyss was a sea of pure void, an ancient primordial substance that existed before thought, before dream, before even the concept of light had meaning. It was emptiness given form, stillness given substance, and it was very, very old. The creatures born of the Abyss, if they could be called creatures at all, were beings of shadow and silence. They had no voice, no will, no desire. They simply existed. Fragments of the void, drifting in eternal darkness. But the world above the Abyss was different. Above the void, in the caverns that would one day become Hallownest, there lived many beings. Insects and bugs of all kinds made their homes in these underground places. They were simple creatures at first, builders of nests, hunters of prey, followers of instinct. They had no language, no culture, no understanding of themselves as anything more than what they were. But they were not alone. High above the deepest caverns, in a place where the stones caught the faintest traces of sunlight filtering down from the surface world, there lived a tribe of moths. The moths were dreamers. They gathered around sources of light, any light, and in that warmth they found something remarkable. They found a god. She was called the Radiance. The Radiance was a being of pure light and thought, a deity of dreams and memory. She existed in a realm beyond the physical world, a place of golden warmth and endless brightness, and she loved her children, the moth tribe, with a fierce and burning devotion. Through the Radiance, the moths gained something that set them apart from other creatures. They gained unity, a shared mind, a collective dream. Every moth was connected to every other moth, and all of them were connected to the Radiance herself. They moved as one, they thought as one, they worshipped as one, and in return for their devotion, the Radiance gave them purpose, meaning, identity. This was the old way of things. For countless generations, the moths lived in the light of their god. They built shrines in high places. They sang wordless songs of praise that echoed through the caverns. They remembered everything, every moment, every ancestor, every dream, because the Radiance remembered for them. They were happy, but nothing lasts forever. One day, a new being came to the caverns. He arrived from somewhere else, from distant lands beyond the underground realm, and he was unlike anything the creatures of this place had ever seen. He was a worm, a great pale serpent of immense power. His body was vast, stretching through tunnels and caverns, and his very presence changed the world around him. Where he passed, the stones seemed to wake. The air itself seemed to think. But this worm did not wish to remain as he was. In a place that would later be called the cast-off shell, the worm performed an act of transformation. He shed his old body, his massive serpentine form, and emerged as something new, something smaller, something closer to the bugs who lived in these caverns. He became the Pale King. The Pale King was small in stature, but vast in power. He radiated a light of his own, not the burning gold of the Radiance, but something paler, cooler, more like moonlight than sunlight. And this pale light carried with it a gift that would change everything. He gave the bugs of the cavern something they had never possessed before. He gave them minds. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to suddenly become aware. One moment you are a creature of instinct. You eat when hungry. You flee when threatened. You follow patterns laid down by 1,000,000 generations of ancestors. You do not question. You do not wonder. You simply are. And then, in an instant, everything changes. You realize that you exist, that you are you, separate from the world, separate from others, a unique being with your own thoughts and your own desires. You look at the cavern around you, and for the first time, you see it as beautiful. You hear a sound and recognize it as music. You feel the weight of time and understand that you will someday die. This was the Pale King's gift. He awakened the bugs of the underground realm. He gave them language and reason. He gave them the ability to build, to create, to dream their own dreams rather than the dreams given to them by others. And the bugs loved him for it. They gathered around him, these newly awakened creatures, and they called him their king. Under his guidance they began to build. They carved cities from stone. They crafted tools and armour. They created art and music and poetry. They became a civilization. They became Hallownest. The kingdom grew quickly. At its heart was the City of Tears, a magnificent metropolis built around a great lake, where water fell eternally from some hidden source above. The constant rain gave the city its name, and the sound of falling water became the heartbeat of Hallownest itself. Grand buildings rose toward the cavern ceiling, spires and towers of pale stone, libraries filled with accumulated knowledge, theatres where performers staged plays for crowds of eager citizens. The City of Tears was the crown jewel of the Pale King's domain, but the kingdom extended far beyond this single city. To the east lay the Crystal Peak, where miners harvested glowing crystals that lit the kingdom's lamps and powered its machines. The crystals hummed with a strange energy, and those who worked too long in the mines sometimes reported hearing voices in the stones, though whether this was truth or merely the madness that came from too much time in the glittering depths, none could say for certain. To the west grew the green path, where the kingdom's gardens flourished under the care of moss and root. Massive plants had grown here over centuries, fed by waters that filtered down from the surface world. Leaves the size of houses provided shelter for those who preferred the quiet life of the garden to the bustle of the city. Deep below, in the fungal wastes, strange creatures cultivated mushrooms and practiced arts that other citizens found unsettling. The fungal wastes were humid and dim, filled with spores that drifted through the air like snow. The Mantis tribe claimed the borders of this region, fierce warriors who kept to themselves and followed their own ancient code. And deeper still, in the ancient basin, the Pale King built his White Palace, a place of light and beauty, where the king and his queen resided. It was said that the palace was so bright, so pure, that shadows could not exist within its walls. Those were golden days, days of prosperity and peace, days when the citizens of Hallownest believed their kingdom would last forever. But there was a problem that the Pale King tried very hard not to think about. When the bugs of the underground gained their new minds, something else happened. Something the Pale King had perhaps intended, or perhaps merely hoped for. They forgot the Radiance. The moth's god, that burning deity of collective dream, required worship to maintain her power. She required memory. She required the devotion of those who believed in her. And when the newly awakened bugs turned their faces toward the pale king's cooler light, they turned away from her burning brightness. At first it was gradual. The old shrines fell into disrepair. The ancient songs were no longer sung. The moths themselves, the Radiance's most devoted children, began to falter in their faith. One by one, they too accepted the Pale King's gift of individual thought. And as they forgot their god, she grew weaker. The radiance faded. Her light dimmed. She retreated into the realm of dreams, becoming little more than a whisper at the edge of consciousness, a half-remembered myth, a story told to children. For a time this seemed like a victory. The old god was gone. The new kingdom flourished. The Pale King had won. But gods do not die so easily, and the Radiance did not forget. It began slowly. A citizen here or there would report strange dreams, visions of burning light, an overwhelming warmth that felt almost like a memory they couldn't quite grasp. They would wake sweating, confused, with the fading image of great wings outlined against an orange sky. The Pale King noticed. Of course he noticed. Very little escaped his attention. But what could he do? Dreams were beyond even his power to control. The dreams grew more frequent, more intense, and then something worse began to happen. Some who experienced these dreams began to change. It started with their eyes, a faint orange glow, barely perceptible at first. Then came the madness, a loss of self, a surrender of the individual mind that the Pale King had worked so hard to bestow. The infected bugs became violent, attacking their neighbours without reason. They moved in strange unison, as if controlled by a single will, because they were. The Radiance was fighting back. From her prison in the realm of dreams, the forgotten god reached out to the minds of Hallownest's citizens. She reminded them of what they had lost. She filled them with her light, her burning, terrible, all-consuming light. And one by one, they returned to her. Not through love this time, not through willing worship, through conquest. The infection spread like a plague through the kingdom. It claimed the weak-willed first, but soon even the strong began to fall. Entire districts of the City of Tears had to be quarantined. The mines fell silent, the gardens rotted. The Pale King watched his beautiful kingdom crumble, and he knew that he had to act. The Pale King retreated to his white palace with his queen, the White Lady, a great root who had taken bug-like form to be with her beloved king. Together, they sought a solution. Ordinary methods had failed. Warriors could not fight an enemy that lived in dreams. Walls could not keep out an infection that spread through thought. The Radiance could not be killed. She was a god, a being of pure concept. As long as even one mind remembered her, she would persist. But perhaps she could be contained. The Pale King conceived of a vessel, a being with a body but no mind, a creature that could contain the Radiance's light without being corrupted by it, because there would be nothing within to corrupt, no thought to twist, no will to break, no voice to cry out. A hollow shell. But how does one create such a thing? A body without a soul, a vessel without a voice? The answer lay in the depths of the kingdom, in the place the Pale King had tried so hard to ignore, the abyss. The Pale King descended into the darkness below the kingdom. There, in that ancient sea of primordial void, he performed acts that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. He took the void, that empty, thoughtless substance, and gave it form. He shaped it into bodies. Small bodies. Bodies that looked like the children of bugs. These were the vessels. The Pale King created thousands of them, tiny figures of living shadow, each one born in the darkness of the abyss. They had shells like insects, but their bodies were void. They had eyes, but those eyes reflected nothing. They had limbs, but those limbs moved without desire. They were empty, or they were supposed to be. The Pale King tested each vessel, searching for perfection. He needed one that was truly hollow. No thought, no will, no voice, no dreams. A pure container for the infection. But vessel after vessel failed his tests. Some showed flickers of emotion. Some displayed hints of fear or longing. Some, when they looked at the Pale King, seemed almost to recognize him, almost to love him. These impure vessels were discarded, cast into the abyss to drift in eternal darkness. Thousands of tiny bodies abandoned by their creator. But finally, the Pale King found what he sought. One vessel that passed every test. One that showed no reaction to pain or kindness or any other stimulus. One that was, as far as the Pale King could determine, perfectly hollow. This vessel was taken from the abyss and raised in the White Palace. It was trained to fight. It was trained to endure. It was prepared for its single, terrible purpose. It was called the Hollow Knight. When the Hollow Knight was ready, the Pale King enacted his plan. 3 of Hallownest's greatest minds were chosen as dreamers, beings who would fall into an eternal sleep, their combined will creating seals that would reinforce the prison the Pale King was about to create. The first was Monomon the Teacher, keeper of Hallownest's archives and one of the kingdom's greatest scholars. She accepted her role willingly, understanding the sacrifice that was required. The second was Lurien the Watcher, who had spent his life observing the City of Tears from his great spire. He too agreed, though his butler would wait faithfully outside his chambers for eternity afterward. The third was Hera the Beast, queen of the distant land of Deepnest. Her participation required a bargain. She would agree to become a dreamer only if the Pale King gave her a child. The king agreed, and from their union came Hornet, princess of 2 worlds. With the dreamers in place, the Hollow Knight faced the Radiance. The battle took place in the realm of dreams, in the temple of the Black Egg at the heart of the kingdom. The Hollow Knight absorbed the Radiance's light, contained her, imprisoned her within its hollow shell. The dreamers added their seals. The infection halted. It was done. The Radiance was trapped inside the Hollow Knight. The kingdom was saved. Or so it seemed. With the infection contained, the Pale King's work was complete, but victory brought no joy to the monarch. Perhaps it was guilt. Guilt for the thousands of vessels he had created and discarded. Guilt for the bargains he had made. Guilt for the terrible purpose to which he had bent his own child. Perhaps it was exhaustion, the weight of centuries finally catching up with him. Or perhaps he simply knew something that others did not. The Pale King retreated to his White Palace and was never seen again. Some say he died. Others say he transformed once more, as he had when he shed his worm form. Others whisper that he still exists somewhere, watching and waiting. Without its ruler, Hallownest began to crumble. The various regions of the kingdom fell out of contact with one another. The stag stations that had once connected all corners of the realm fell into disuse. The citizens, those who remained uninfected, began to forget what their kingdom had once been. And deep in the temple of the Black Egg, something was wrong. The Hollow Knight had been imperfect. Despite every test, despite every precaution, the vessel had not been truly hollow. Somewhere within it, hidden even from the Pale King, there had been the faintest spark of something. Will, perhaps, or hope, or love for the Father who had created it. And the Radiance found that spark. She worked at it over centuries. She whispered to it. She burned against it. She turned that tiny imperfection into a crack, and through that crack she began to seep. The infection returned, slowly at first, then faster. The orange glow spread through the forgotten crossroads. It claimed the fungal wastes. It crept into the City of Tears. Hallownest fell into ruin, and there was no king to save it this time. No king, that is. But there was another vessel. We come now to our protagonist. In the wastes beyond Hallownest's borders, a desolate place called the Howling Cliffs, a small figure appears. It is tiny, even by the standards of bugs. Its body is dark as shadow, and its face is a pale mask with two empty eyes. This is the night. This is one of the discarded vessels, one of the thousands who were thrown into the abyss when they failed the Pale King's tests. Somehow, some way, this particular vessel escaped. It climbed out of the darkness. It wandered the lands beyond Hallownest. And now, drawn by some instinct it cannot name, it has returned. It has come home. The night carries a small blade, a weapon called a nail in the manner of Hallownest. It has no voice, no memory, no clear purpose. It simply moves forward, descending into the kingdom below. This is where our true journey begins. The knight enters Hallownest through an old well, descending into a place called the Forgotten Crossroads. Once this was a bustling hub of travel and commerce. Tunnels branched off in every direction, leading to all corners of the kingdom. Travellers would stop here to rest, to trade, to share news from distant regions. The benches that still line the cavern walls once hosted countless weary wanderers. Now the crossroads are silent. The infection has reached even here. Creatures that once were citizens now shamble through the tunnels, their minds lost to the Radiance's light. Orange cysts pulse on the walls like diseased growths. The very air feels wrong, thick and warm, as if the cavern itself is running a fever. The knight moves through this place with caution, its nail ready. It encounters its first enemies here, crawlids and tick-ticks and gruzzers, simple creatures that have been twisted by the infection. It fights, it survives, it presses on. In an old town called Dirtmouth, perched at the very edge of the underground world, the knight finds one of the few remaining inhabitants of Hallownest. An elderly bug named Elderbug, who has lived in this town his entire life, speaks to the knight with kindness. Elderbug has seen many travellers descend into the ruins below. Few have returned. But something about this small, silent wanderer gives him pause. There is a quality to the knight, a quietness, a determination, that the old bug cannot quite name. He wishes the knight well, and the knight descends deeper. Following the paths of the Forgotten Crossroads, the knight discovers a passage choked with vegetation. This leads to the green path, the overgrown gardens of Hallownest. Here, the infection has been held at bay by the sheer vitality of the plants. Great leaves filter what little light reaches this deep, casting everything in shades of green and shadow. Thorns as thick as the knight's body line the paths. Acid pools bubble and hiss in the lowest places. The knight navigates this dangerous garden, marvelling at its twisted beauty. Moss creatures roam the paths, hostile but not infected, natural guardians of this place rather than victims of the plague. And then, in a clearing deep within the green path, the knight encounters someone unexpected. She drops from above without warning, a figure wrapped in a red cloak, wielding a needle-thin blade. Her movements are fluid, predatory. She attacks the knight without hesitation. This is Hornet, daughter of the Pale King and Hera the Beast, princess of Hallownest and Deepnest both, guardian of secrets that the knight cannot yet understand. Their battle is fierce. Hornet is faster than anything the knight has faced before, her needle flashing like lightning. But the knight endures. It weathers her assault, striking back when opportunities arise, learning her patterns even as it fights for its life. Finally, Hornet pauses. She studies the knight with calculating eyes that seem to recognize something in the vessel's empty gaze. She speaks a single word: ghost. Then she vanishes, leaving the knight alone with its questions and its wounds. But this is not the last time they will meet. The knight's journey continues through the fungal wastes, a humid, spore-filled region where mushrooms grow to enormous sizes and the air itself seems alive with drifting seeds. Here, at the edge of this fungal realm, the knight encounters the Mantis tribe. The Mantises are warriors, perhaps the finest warriors Hallownest has ever known. They follow an ancient code of honour, valuing strength and skill above all else. Unlike most of Hallownest's citizens, the Mantises never fully integrated into the Pale King's kingdom. They acknowledged his sovereignty, but they kept to themselves, following their own lords and their own traditions. And they never succumbed to the infection. When the plague swept through Hallownest, the mantises closed their borders. They cut down any infected creature that approached their territory. Their discipline, their unity, their sheer stubborn pride, these qualities saved them when all else fell. But they do not welcome strangers. The night must prove its worth to the mantis lords, the three sisters who rule the tribe. It must face them in combat, matching blade against claw, in a test of skill that leaves no room for error. This battle is different from others. There is no malice in the mantis lords, no corruption. This is a test, pure and simple. The mantises wish to know if the knight is worthy of their respect, and when the knight emerges victorious, it earns something precious. The mantises bow, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The knight has proven itself a warrior of sufficient caliber. It is granted passage through their territory. More than that, it has earned their respect, a gift that the mantis tribe does not offer lightly. As the knight passes through their village, the mantis warriors who once attacked it now bow their heads in greeting. It is a small moment, but in a kingdom of ruin and hostility, small moments matter. The night continues its descent, passing through regions of crystal and darkness until it reaches the heart of Hallownest, the City of Tears. Even in its ruined state, the city is breathtaking. Massive spires reach toward the cavern ceiling, where water falls in an eternal rain. The sound of droplets striking stone and metal fills the air with a constant, gentle symphony. Blue light emanates from the buildings themselves, casting long shadows through the rain. This was once the greatest city in the underground world. Scholars debated philosophy in its halls. Artists created masterpieces that hung in galleries now fallen to dust. Citizens walked its streets with pride, secure in the knowledge that they lived at the centre of civilization itself. Now, those streets are patrolled by infected husks. The night moves through the city, taking in its faded grandeur. It finds the nailsmith, a craftsman who still practices his art even in these dark times, improving the knight's weapon in exchange for pale ore gathered from the kingdom's depths. It finds Lem, a relic seeker who has devoted his life to collecting and studying artifacts from Hallownest's golden age. He is gruff and dismissive, but his love for the kingdom's history shines through his complaints. And it finds the Soul Sanctum, a place of horror hidden within the city itself. Before the infection, there was another threat to Hallownest, a more subtle one. Some of the kingdom's scholars became obsessed with the nature of soul, the spiritual energy that all living things possess. They believed that soul could be harvested, concentrated, used to extend life and enhance power indefinitely. They formed an organization dedicated to this research. The Soul Master led them. In the Soul Sanctum, the scholars conducted terrible experiments. They drew soul from living subjects, leaving empty husks behind. They convinced themselves that they were doing important work, that the suffering they caused was justified by the knowledge they gained. They were wrong. When the infection came, many of the scholars succumbed. Their already corrupt minds proved easy prey for the Radiance's influence. The Soul Sanctum became a nightmare, a place where maddened scholars roam the halls alongside their failed experiments. The knight must fight through this place to obtain an item of power, the Desolate Dive, a spell that allows it to plunge through barriers that would otherwise be impassable. And at the heart of the sanctum, the knight faces the Soul Master himself. He is pathetic in a way, a creature who sacrificed everything, his morality, his sanity, his soul, in pursuit of immortality, only to be left a howling madman in a tower of horrors. The night grants him the peace he does not deserve. As the night explores the ruined kingdom, it learns more about the three dreamers who seal the Temple of the Black Egg. To reach the infected Hollow Knight, to address the source of the plague once and for all, the knight must first break these seals. And to break the seals, it must find and destroy the dreamers themselves. The first is Monomon the Teacher. Her archives lie at the bottom of the City of Tears, in a place called the Fog Canyon. This region is filled with acidic mist and explosive creatures, a natural defense system that protects the secrets held within. Monomon was Hallownest's greatest scholar. Her archives contain the accumulated knowledge of the kingdom, scientific treatises, historical records, philosophical debates that raged across generations. Even in sleep, she guards this knowledge, but she is not unprotected. When the night reaches her resting place, it encounters a surprising defender. Quirrell, a fellow traveller whom the night has met before, stands guard over the sleeping dreamer. He is bound to Monomon by ties of memory and affection, wearing a mask that was once hers. But Quirrell does not fight to stop the night. Instead, he helps. Quirrell understands what must be done. He recognises that the sealing has failed, that Hallownest cannot be saved by keeping the status quo. With tears in his eyes, or what would be tears if his kind could cry, he assists the night in ending Monomon's eternal sleep. The first seal breaks, and somewhere, in the Temple of the Black Egg, the chains on the Hollow Knight grow weaker. The second dreamer is Lurien the Watcher. His tower stands at the highest point of the City of Tears, overlooking the entire metropolis. Even now, his eye, a great unblinking lens, gazes down upon the streets below. Lurien watched over the city in life, and he watches over it still, in his endless sleep. To reach him, the knight must ascend the tower, making its way past the palace guards who still patrol its halls. These are elite guardians, more capable than the others, and in fact, not all of them are affected by the light at all. Some are simply loyal, maintaining their vigil even though their master will never wake. There is something noble in that loyalty, something admirable, but the knight cannot afford to pause. At the top of the tower, it finds Lurien's chamber. The Watcher sleeps upon a dais, his butler standing faithful watch nearby. This butler, a small, devoted creature, has waited here for centuries, performing his duties even though there is no one awake to appreciate them. When the night approaches, the butler does not interfere. He cannot. He is not a guardian. He simply asks the knight to be gentle. Lurien's seal breaks. 2 down, 1 remaining. The third dreamer is the most difficult to reach. Hera the Beast sleeps in Deepnest, a realm as far removed from the City of Tears as it is possible to be. This is Hornet's other homeland, a place of perpetual darkness, and creatures that see visitors as outsiders rather than guests. The knight must descend into Deepnest, alone. It is a challenging journey. The darkness here is absolute. The night's small light illuminates only a few feet in any direction, and beyond that sphere of safety, things move. Things watch. Things wait for the right moment. The spiders of Deepnest are not like the others. They don't need to be. They are territorial by nature, viewing all who enter as trespassers. They spin webs across the paths. They emerge from the darkness. They appear in numbers that would overwhelm a less skilled traveller. But the night continues. Deep in the heart of Deepnest, past the village of the Weavers and the lair of the Collector, the night finds Hera's resting place. And there, Hornet is waiting. She does not stand in the way this time. Instead, she speaks. She explains the agreement that created her, the deal between her mother and the Pale King. She reveals that Hera agreed to become a dreamer in exchange for a daughter, knowing that she would never wake to raise her. Hornet has grown up alone because of this choice. She has spent her entire existence guarding a kingdom that was never truly her own, protecting secrets that brought her no joy. And yet, she does not ask the night to turn back. She understands better than anyone what must be done. She only asks that the night complete the task without delay. The third seal breaks, and the door to the Temple of the Black Egg swings open. Before facing the Hollow Knight, the knight discovers something about its own nature. In the ancient basin, that region near the White Palace where the royal family once dwelt, there is a passage that leads downward, deeper than deep, beyond even the lightless tunnels that most citizens believed were the bottom of the world. This passage leads to the abyss. The night descends into absolute darkness. The void here is thick, almost tangible. a sea of emptiness that presses against the night's shell. At the very bottom, in a place where no light has ever shone, the night finds something terrible. Bodies, thousands of them. The discarded vessels, the failed experiments, the Pale King's shame made manifest. They drift in the void sea, these tiny shells. Some are broken, some are whole, all are empty. Whatever spark of existence they once possessed has long since faded. They are nothing now but reminders of a desperate king's desperate gamble. And the night realizes that it is one of them. It was born here, created here, discarded here, judged impure because it possessed some quality that the Pale King feared. Only by some miracle, some accident of void and will, did it escape the abyss and wander into the world above. It is not special, not chosen, not destined. It is simply here, and perhaps that is enough. There is one more secret that the night must uncover. Hidden within a fallen palace, accessible only through dreams, lies the truth of the Pale King's fate. The White Palace exists now only as a memory, a dream construct maintained by the lingering essence of the king himself. To enter, the knight must possess certain items of power. To traverse it, the knight must demonstrate skills beyond what any normal journey would demand. The palace is a trial. Its rooms shift and change. Thorns line every surface. Saw blades spin through corridors that seem designed more to kill than to guide. This is not a place meant to be navigated. It is a test. Perhaps the final test that the Pale King ever devised. The knight perseveres. Room by room, challenge by challenge, death by death. For in dreams, death is not permanent, merely educational. And at the heart of the palace, in a throne room of white stone and pale light, the knight finds what remains of the Pale King. He is dead. His body sits upon his throne, tiny and still. The monarch who created Hallownest, who gave thought to thousands, who fought a god and lost. He is gone. Destroyed by guilt, or age, or simply the weight of his own mistakes. But he left something behind. Half of a charm, the king soul, a fragment of pale light that resonates with power. When combined with its other half, which the White Lady guards in her isolation, this charm becomes something else entirely, the void heart. With this item, the knight gains a power that changes everything. It can unify the void. It can command the emptiness from which it was born. It can, perhaps, succeed where the Hollow Knight failed. It can contain the Radiance. At last, the knight stands before the temple of the Black Egg. The seals are broken. The door stands open. Beyond lies the creature that was meant to save Hallownest, the chosen vessel, the pure shell, the Hollow Knight itself. The knight enters the chamber, and there, chained to the walls of a prison it has occupied for centuries, is its sibling. The Hollow Knight is broken. Its shell is cracked. Orange infection leaks from wounds that will never heal. Its eyes, which should be empty, burn with the light of the god it was meant to contain. When it sees the knight, something happens. Recognition, perhaps, or instinct, or simply the Radiance's influence, directing her prison to eliminate any threat. The Hollow Knight attacks. This battle is the culmination of everything the knight has experienced. Every skill learned, every upgrade acquired, every moment of perseverance through impossible odds. All of it comes to bear in this fight. The Hollow Knight is enormous, powerful. It wields a nail larger than the knight's entire body. Its attacks shake the chamber. But it is also damaged, suffering. In its moments of clarity, brief windows between the Radiance's control, it turns its blade upon itself, trying to help its sibling, trying to end its own torment. The knight fights on, and eventually, the Hollow Knight falls. But what happens next depends on the knight's choices. If the knight has not acquired the void heart, if it has not confronted the truth of its origins, then there is only one outcome. The Hollow Knight dies, and the knight takes its place. The chains descend, the temple seals itself, the radiance is contained once more, this time within a new vessel. But nothing has changed. The night is no more hollow than its predecessor. In time, perhaps centuries, perhaps millennia, it too will crack. The infection will seep through. The cycle will begin again. This is not victory. This is postponement. If the knight has acquired the void heart but has not prepared for the true battle, another ending is possible. Hornet appears in the chamber as the Hollow Knight falls. She has followed the knight, watching its journey, waiting for this moment. She fights alongside her sibling, and when the Hollow Knight is defeated, she uses her own strength to help seal the temple. Hornet becomes a new dreamer. The knight takes the Hollow Knight's place as the vessel, but this time the seal is stronger. Hornet's will reinforces it. The infection will be contained for longer, perhaps forever, perhaps. But the knight and Hornet are both trapped. The cycle continues, and somewhere the Radiance still burns, waiting for her next chance. But there is a third possibility. If the knight has acquired the void heart and has prepared itself for the ultimate battle, something else can happen. When the Hollow Knight falls, Hornet arrives as before, but this time, instead of helping seal the temple, she holds the Hollow Knight's weakened form in place. "Now!" she cries. "Do what I could not!" The knight uses the dream nail, a weapon forged from ancient dreams, to enter the Hollow Knight's mind. And there, in a realm of light and fury, it finally faces the Radiance herself. She is magnificent. She is terrible. The Radiance fills the sky of this dream realm with wings of burning light. She is a god, old and angry, and absolutely determined to destroy the tiny shade that dares to challenge her. Her attacks are devastating. Beams of light that scorch the air, spikes that erupt from below, swords that rain from above. This is the most difficult battle the knight has ever faced. The knight has no health recovery here, no benchmarks, no second chances. It must fight perfectly, or it must fail. But the knight is not alone. As the battle progresses, something stirs in the void below. The discarded vessels, thousands of them, the Pale King's abandoned children, respond to the void heart's call. They rise from the darkness. They flow upward like a tide of living shadow. The night transforms. It becomes something new, a creature of pure void, massive and powerful, striking at the Radiance with arms made of emptiness itself. This is the Shade Lord, the void united, the abyss given purpose and direction, and it is hungry. The Radiance screams as the void consumes her. She burns, she fights, she refuses to accept her end. But the void is absolute. The old god dies, and in her death, the infection dies with her. The orange glow fades from the eyes of Hallownest's citizens. The cysts on the walls shrivel and dissolve. The kingdom is not restored. Too much has been lost for that. But it is freed. The dream ends. The night is gone. Nothing remains of the vessel but an empty shell, cracked and still, lying in the ruins of the temple. Hornet kneels beside it, mourning a sibling she barely knew. But high above, in the fading light, something that might be peace settles over the land. The Radiance is no more. The kingdom can finally rest. The story of Hollow Knight is a tragedy. It is a story of gods and mortals, of light and void, of desperate choices made by desperate beings. It is a story in which there are no true villains, only creatures fighting for survival, for power, for the people they love. The Pale King was not evil. He gave his subjects the gift of thought, the ability to become more than instinct. But in doing so, he also doomed them. He created a kingdom built on the forgotten corpse of a god, and when that god rose again, he sacrificed his own children in a futile attempt to contain her. The Radiance was not evil. She loved her children, the moths, with a passion that burned like the sun. When they forgot her, she fought to be remembered, and in her pain and rage, she destroyed the very beings she had once cherished. The Hollow Knight was not evil. It was created to be empty, but it was not empty. It loved its father. It wanted to succeed, and that love, that desire, became the crack through which the infection seeped. Even the infection itself was not truly evil. It was a god's desperate embrace, twisted by rejection into something terrible. And what of our protagonist? The knight was a cast-off, a failure, one of thousands discarded into the void because it was not hollow enough to serve the Pale King's purpose. But it escaped. It wandered, and when it returned to Hallownest, it did what the supposedly perfect vessel could not. It ended the cycle. Perhaps the knight succeeded because it was impure. Perhaps the tiny spark of will that the Pale King had rejected was exactly what was needed. A determination that could not be extinguished, a stubbornness that refused to submit. Or perhaps the knight succeeded simply because it tried, because it kept moving forward when others would have stopped, because it faced every challenge, solved every puzzle, and never asked for recognition or reward. The knight will never be remembered by name. It had no name. It spoke no words. It left no testament beyond the empty shell in the temple, but its actions freed a kingdom. Throughout its journey, the knight encountered many beings with their own tales. Quirrell, the wandering scholar, who followed a half-remembered call back to his homeland and found closure at the edge of a quiet lake. His mask still waits at the water's edge, a memorial to a life well lived. Cloth, the warrior who sought a glorious death and found it fighting alongside the knight against a terrible creature. She was afraid in the end, but she was brave anyway, and that is what matters. Myla, the cheerful miner who sang songs in the Crystal Peak. She succumbed to the infection despite the knight's hopes, becoming another victim of the Radiance's rage. Sometimes, hope is not enough. The nailsmith, who crafted the perfect weapon and then asked the knight to use it on him. His life's work was complete. What purpose remained? Though if the knight refuses, the nailsmith finds new purpose in painting, discovering that creation need not end with a single masterpiece. Zote, the arrogant would-be hero who claimed credit for the knight's victories and complained endlessly about everything. He survived the kingdom's fall through sheer luck and bluster, proof that sometimes incompetence is its own form of protection. Cornifer, the map-maker who explored every corner of Hallownest, driven by curiosity that bordered on recklessness. His wife worried. He went anyway. And because of him, the knight always knew which way to go. These lives mattered. These stories are part of Hollow Knight's tale as well, woven into the larger tapestry of loss and perseverance and unlikely hope. Dear listener, we are approaching the end of our journey together. If you have been drifting towards sleep, let yourself drift. The story will wait for you, as stories always do, ready to be revisited whenever you wish. If you have been working through the night, I hope this tale has kept you company. I hope the quiet rhythms of the night's journey have made your own labours feel a little lighter. Hollow Knight is a story about many things. It is about the price of power, the terrible costs that come with ruling, with creating, with trying to control forces beyond mortal understanding. It is about memory and forgetting, the gods we abandon and the consequences of that abandonment. It is about finding purpose when you have none, wandering into a broken world and deciding, through action rather than words, that you will try to fix it. And it is about endings. All kingdoms fall eventually. All stories reach their conclusion. All beings, mortal or divine, eventually fade. But the manner of that ending matters. Hallownest fell in tragedy. It could have remained fallen, its citizens forever trapped between infection and death, its ruins slowly crumbling into nothing. Instead, one small vessel, voiceless, nameless, empty of everything except determination, descended into the darkness and brought the kingdom peace. That matters. That means something. So rest now, dear listener. Whether this is the end of your night or the middle of your work, let yourself settle into whatever comes next. The story of Hollow Knight is complete, but stories, true stories, never really end. They simply wait to be told again, perhaps tomorrow, or next week, or in some distant future. You will remember the City of Tears and its eternal reign. You will remember the Mantis Lords and their warrior's bow. You will remember the Hollow Knight, chained in darkness, stabbing itself in desperate attempts at redemption. And you will remember the night, that small, silent figure, that wanderer from the void, that vessel who was thrown away and returned anyway, driven by something that even its creator could not understand. May you carry some of that determination with you. May you find your own paths through whatever darkness you face. And may you know, always, that even the smallest and most forgotten among us can change the world. Good night, dear listener. Until we meet again.